Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Keys of the Castle podcast. Today is going to be a bit of a different episode as I normally do. So, maybe possibly it might be a little bit slightly less all ages friendly or kid friendly than normal. Nothing crazy, nothing too crazy, just nothing that probably a kid would be interested in. So, today I'm going to talk a bit about kind of this strange link and similarity that there is between Disney and punk rock culture. Now that's super random, and I'm not going to get super into the weeds of punk rock or anything like that. There's just too much there. But I will say that what kind of sparked this, at least what sparked this episode, so not that I haven't talked about this before, I've heard kind of Adam the Woo reference this before as well. And it's also just something I recognize at a very, very, very young age. And I will, I don't know, I feel this weird need to kind of prove myself in a way that I'm not just taking this from Adam the Woo, who's a much bigger and better Disney influencer. So I'm not even on that influencer level at all. But I noticed this link when I was a kid because I've always loved Disney and punk rock music and punk rock culture since I was really, really young because my older siblings were interested in punk rock and things like this. And I just loved it. I really enjoyed the music. Not gonna lie, some of the music kind of freaked me out when I was a kid. But just like Pirates of the Caribbean and Haunted Mansion, like even though it freaked me out, I absolutely loved it. And most kids love Disneyland, so of course I loved Disney and Disneyland as a kid too. But I kind of first realized this when I was young, listening to bands like No Doubt and the Vandals. So the Vandals have a song. I'm just thinking about this all off the cuff now on the fly. I didn't prepare any of what I'm saying right now about these bands, so I actually don't remember the song off the top of my head. I think it's called like A Pirate's Life for Me or something. The Vandals have that song. I am not encouraging anyone to check this stuff out, just again in case it's kid friendly, but in case it's not kid friendly, I mean, and stuff like that. Stuff like also No Doubt, they have an entire album. It's kind of like a play on the phrase the Magic Kingdom. So they have an album called Tragic Kingdom. They have a song called Tragic Kingdom. There's like a sound clip, like a sound bite of the safety script on Matterhorn on that song. So yeah, I realized this link very early on, and I just absolutely loved it. Another thing which I heard another Disney content creator talk about this, which is Offhand Disney, which I absolutely love that channel. I was a little bit hurt because he kind of dissed this whole thing I'm about to say, but they also had a music event, I guess, sort of a thing, kind of like a music thing at Disneyland years and years ago, which was a Christian sort of a music festival. Not really a music festival, but they had the Harvest Crusade one time, which is like a tradition. I don't want to say traditional, but it's basically this yearly Christian event in Southern California. And we sort of grew up going to those. And so they had one at Disneyland one year, which I thought was incredible. I'm sorry that Offhand Disney thought it was strange or something. I don't think it was really a big deal. In fact, I thought it was incredible and absolutely amazing. But anyway, it was awesome. So there is this aspect as well that I remember having this link at Disneyland, because at that time, rock music was a bit more popular than it is now. Things have kind of shifted more, massively much more towards hip hop and pop. But back then, the bigger genre was definitely rock and punk rock and ska. If you don't know what ska is, you'll have to look it up. I can't explain that all now. But basically, I would say, during the late 90s and early 2000s, I would say there was a huge shift, and that's kind of when the hip hop and pop scene started taking over a bit. But either way, got to see some rock and slightly punk rock and ska bands at Disneyland, which was really cool. So Switchfoot, the OC Supertones, got to see those bands there. Another one I didn't get to see that day, but was Audio Adrenaline. They played at Disneyland as well. And I just thought that was really cool. It kind of all just made sense. Now that I'm thinking about it, a huge link also is OC, so just Orange County. So there's, obviously very deep cultural roots of Disney in Orange County, California, because Disneyland is in Orange County, California, in Anaheim. And there's also a lot of punk and ska and stuff like that, punk and rock and punk and ska punk, all that stuff. All those roots are pretty deep in Orange County also. So bands and punk bands that are from around Orange County would be like No Doubt, OC Supertones if you're into the ska, Christian ska punk scene, No Doubt, The Offspring, Social Distortion, just to name a few of the big ones. Pretty sure Offspring is from Orange County. But either way, they all just seem to go hand in hand. And so all that to say, what prompted this is not Adam the Woo, but what prompted this is actually a really pretty cool documentary that's on Disney Plus right now. I think it's called The Story of a Mouse. Just look up documentaries, the Disney documentaries on Disney Plus, and there's a documentary about Mickey Mouse, and it is super, super sick. It's so cool, and I really enjoyed it. It is really, really pushing the limits of really idolizing Mickey Mouse. So I think that's just kind of in the nature of Disney, of course. But I'm not quite on that level of idolizing Mickey Mouse to some of the extents portrayed in that documentary. But either way, really, really, really cool documentary. I really, really loved it. And oddly enough, I was completely shocked to see a segment on the link between punk rock and Mickey Mouse. So pretty crazy. It's really cool. They show like some pictures of like the Ramones wearing their Mickey Mouse shirts and stuff like that. So it's really cool. But anyway, I just want to talk about this link. And so I thought it would be interesting. So I don't think I've ever actually used AI or Chat GPT to give me any of my content whatsoever. I know that I have a long way to go in terms of the production and even content quality of this podcast and the stuff I've been putting out there for the past little while. But that being said, I kind of do a little bit, take just a teensy tiny bit of pride in the fact that like pretty much all of my content is completely unscripted, unrehearsed. I do not very much research at all. I mean, again, that can kind of attest to, the bit of ways I have to go in increasing the quality and the room for growth. But that being said, I do feel like it is at least a little bit cool that all my content is original and kind of pretty much like 100% off the cuff. Even in the interview that I did with my friend Candace on Gluten Free Disneyland, even that stuff was completely unrehearsed, and it just worked out really well for that one, at least to me. So, but at least for today's subject, I ended up actually doing a little Chat GPT search. So just wanted to put that out there just to help kind of give me some ideas for what I'm going to talk about next. Everything I've talked about to this point is literally stuff I literally just thought of as I was saying it. after I press record. But everything going, well, at least the stuff I'm about to talk about now, maybe not everything going forward from this point forward in the episode is going to be from ChatGPT, but I'm just going to read it out and kind of maybe give some ideas or thoughts or feedback. But basically, in the search, because I was interested about how in-depth this would be, which it didn't turn out great, but it did give me some ideas, but I didn't plan ahead, so I'm just going to kind of rethink through the ChatGPT answer as I go through it. But basically, I put in the search, what is the correlation and similarities between Disney and punk rock? Some of the stuff that's on here is that for the kind of subheading on the first portion, there's DIY, ethos, and reinvention. So Disney started as a small independent studio with Walt Disney and a few animators pushing boundaries in animation. It grew into an empire by constantly reinventing itself. I don't actually really agree with this. I can see where it's going. And then it says, on the punk rock side of things, it thrives on DIY culture. That part is true. Bands often start small, self-produce their music, and challenge mainstream norms, which is kind of also true. So I guess that is a pretty good point. Like, Walt Disney can be seen and Disneyland as pretty punk rock because they did kind of go a bit of counterculture and do the unexpected. They're unique even today. Disney is pretty unique in their theme park products and services. And definitely Walt Disney in his time is someone who kind of went against the grain in his industry and lifetime. So absolutely, yeah, I can see how that's punk rock. Now, I don't know if, all of that is something that is kind of like explicitly thought about or like particularly recognized in, I don't know, this link between punk rock and Disney for the people who kind of unintentionally just love both. But either way, yeah, there is some truth to that. And so, yeah, that's kind of the next bit as well is counterculture. I'm going to kind of skip that part. It's not really super good, and I kind of already just described most of stuff like that. There's another subsection of subcultures and fandoms. What I do like about this is that it mentions creativity. So I think that's another huge one, is that there's this real level of, yes, kind of DIY, but I think it's much more than that. I think punk rock culture really has a value of creativity and thinking outside the box and being different and unique and going against the grain. And that's something that Disney has as well. Just, in the nature of, something like animation being creative. Yeah, just in and of itself, Disney is kind of a bit of a creative-based company in what they do and have always done. So I think that's definitely a huge, kind of might seem much more obvious. It's just also at the same time not something that people might think about every day. Or it might not be recognizable right away, even when comparing, punk rock and Disney. But anyway, I thought that was pretty good. And this one is kind of almost abstract, but the next subheading is influence on fashion and music. So it's just talking about how punk rock culture has both influenced fashion and music, and so has Disney. What's kind of interesting though is like how they combine. Like, maybe to some people they don't care and they won't make sense of this, but to a lot of us, especially to those of us who kind of identify a bit or have some value that we find in both Disney and punk rock, like there's kind of a bit of a mystery of like why does it look so cool for the Ramones to be punk rock and have like a Mickey Mouse shirt while they're on stage playing punk rock music and looking all punk rock? Like, I don't know. It just somehow works. Another thing mentioned here is The Nightmare Before Christmas. So that is also a film and sort of almost like, I don't want to say a subculture, but it is an aspect of, entertainment culture that is really loved by a lot of people, as it turns out, who are rock lovers and punk rock lovers and even like goth, I guess. So this is interesting. Let's see what this says here in this same subheading. Punk rock has influenced Disney too. Films like Nightmare Before Christmas and Descendants borrow punk aesthetics. Oh yeah, that's totally true. And bands like the Ramones have been featured in Disney projects. That's really cool. I don't even remember reading that. I guess maybe one of the things that ChatGPT is talking about is maybe that the Ramones were featured in this documentary on Disney Plus. I have no idea. Or maybe they were featured elsewhere as well. But so when it says the Descendants, I think it's talking about like there's like a Disney movie or something, or a Disney show or movie called The Descendants. There's actually also a punk rock band called The Descendants, which I think has nothing to do with this. It's just a really funny and odd coincidence. Unless Disney was also somehow, prompted to call the show The Descendants, knowing about the punk rock band The Descendants. Probably not, but you never know, actually. It's definitely a possibility there. But yeah, actually, it's a really cool kind of point that this ChatGPT brings up, that The Nightmare Before Christmas was influenced by punk aesthetics. I never really thought about that. Never super noticed that as well, but I suppose it makes sense. I can see definitely Tim Burton being on the punk rock and goth side of things, and also Danny Elfman is kind of a rock type of dude, as far as I know. Danny Elfman is the guy that does the music score for Nightmare Before Christmas. And the last subheading here is Disney wants an underdog in Hollywood with risky projects like Snow White and Steamboat Willie changing the industry. Disney was once an underdog in Hollywood with risky projects like Snow White and Steamboat Willie changing the industry. Now it dominates entertainment. I want to actually jump back to the first point about reinventing. So there was this portion about how, I'll just read the initial part of the first subheading, the subheading of DIY, ethos, and reinvention. So Disney started as a small independent studio with Walt Disney and a few animators pushing the boundaries in animation. It grew into an empire by constantly reinventing itself. Punk rock. Punk rock thrives on DIY culture. Bands often start small, self-produce their music, and challenge mainstream norms. Like Disney, punk artists evolve while maintaining their core identity. That's not always true. There is absolutely, almost even the vast majority of punk rock music and culture kind of have an ethos of like not evolving and not reinventing themselves and actually staying true to their original form. But I think what that's kind of referring to is this very last portion of this ChatGPT search. So I'll reference back now down to this last ChatGPT points on the search, where it says in the subheading, outsider to mainstream pipeline. So Disney was an underdog in Hollywood with risky projects like Snow White and Steamboat Willie challenging the industry. Now it dominates the entertainment. Punk rock. Punk rock started as an underground movement, but influenced mainstream culture, with bands like Green Day and The Offspring bringing punk elements into pop. So that, I'm not going to lie, is actually kind of a great point. It is and it isn't. It's a great point because it is very accurate in these examples, in the way punk rock came about. So that is kind of cool because I guess maybe some people who like punk rock also can maybe easily like or attach onto Disney because Disney has this history, and maybe even if you don't know about their history specifically, you can kind of just tell that they originally are someone who does things kind of outside of the box, which I think is kind of already something I said towards the beginning, or somewhere along this podcast episode. But the only, again, there's massive exceptions to that because definitely I think bands like Green Day, which they talk about all the time in their interviews and documentaries, they kind of pulled like a double reversal, like they did a parlay to a parlay. Like they kind of did this whole thing where instead of staying true to punk, they kind of went mainstream. So even though this punk rock mentality is kind of like a forget you, I'm doing my own thing attitude, they kind of did that toward punk rock itself, which I don't think is like necessarily really a core aspect of punk rock itself. So kind of a weird whole inception of punk rock and creativity and culture. But either way, some pretty decent points. And the last closing final thought on this ChatGPT, which I'm just going to read out now off the cuff here, says both Disney and punk rock represent two sides of a coin. Interesting. One polished and mainstream, the other raw and rebellious, but both thrive on passion, creativity, and community. Community, that might be the weakest point of all of those. And then it says, and sometimes they collide in unexpected ways. So, yeah, that's true. I mean, I think the fact that Disney and punk rock collide in any sort of way is completely unexpected. But yeah, at the same time, I think there's definitely lots of punk rock that anybody can identify of, anyone of any age or anything like that. Same, idea that's similar with Disney as well. I mean, obviously there's people there who just don't like either of these things. But I think the fact that they do kind of overlap, correlate to each other, collide, and have so many similarities is kind of something that's a really cool, unexpected cultural phenomenon to me. So yeah, I'm really thankful for Disney and punk rock. It's made for a lot of good times and happy moments throughout my childhood and life. And yeah, definitely a very different type of episode today, but wanted to jump on and just talk about this subject because to me it's a really cool and interesting subject. And yeah, definitely check out the Mickey Mouse documentary on Disney Plus if you want to see a bit more. There's some really, really cool stuff on there. I really love also that Mickey Mouse and Disney have this correlation with, like, I don't know if Americanism is the right term, but like America. I love that as well, which, anyone can see from maybe some of my content or posts. Disneyland was actually dedicated to, Walt Disney said, the ideals and things like that made up America. I don't have the quote in front of me, but either way, that's another good one. So maybe I'll do that one in the future. But either way, that's going to do it for this one. So thanks so much for listening if you have. And I'll just leave with this thought. As always, whatever is good, whatever is true, whatever is pure, think on these things. All right, guys, take care.